two speakers. Actually, I'm going to introduce the primary speaker, I believe from the 461st Bomb Group. I'm told that his Hjalmar Johanson. That may not be a correct, but that's the way it was written for me to introduce
Pretty
him.
good.
And also his associate, who is Orville Hommert from the 484th Bomb Group. And they were on the same mission. And so we'll let you describe what happened.
Thank you all for coming this afternoon. I'm going to try and take you on a sentimental journey.
Wow.
And in order to take you on a sentimental journey, I thought I needed to dress for the occasion to get you in the right mood. So I put on my 71-year-old uniform. And if you think I'm bragging, you're right. Most of the ladies I know say, my husband could never fit into his old uniform. But that's the way it is today. What I'd like to do, I'm not sure, I really owe a debt of honor to, well, not only to Win, but to this gentleman here who's trying to work on our visual aids. And we gave him an impossible task. And he so far has responded beautifully. We told him to do things that couldn't be done, but he seems to be doing them. So will we get the video?
You want to start with that or the slides?
No, start with the video first.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just explain the video, and then I'll get Orville talking about it. First of all, Orville is my buddy. He was a tail gunner, I was a nose gunner. He was in the 484th, and I'm in 461st, and we both were on this mission. I had never met Orville before. He was in another airplane in front of mine. I didn't know any of the guys in the airplanes in front of me, barely even the guys in my squadron. But anyway, I've gotten to know Orville. We met 15 years ago when we went to Czechoslovakia, or the Czech Republic. They invited us back to thank us for what we did to try and liberate the Czech people. And so we've been back 3 times since that to the Czech Republic. The last time in November of last year, which was the 70th anniversary of my arriving in a parachute nearby. So the Czechs were all out in force. They treated us like rock stars, literally. They wanted us to sign autographs, took photos, burdened us down with all these gifts before we left, and we just couldn't find anyone that was more appreciative. And we both said, I think Orville said it too, I wish we could get Americans to appreciate what we did half as much. But I know you guys all appreciate what we did, so I'm not wrapping you up in that bundle. Orville, I'm going to give Orville a chance in a few minutes. But what I'd like to do is show you this DVD. It's an 8-minute, so you don't have to be worried that you're going to go to sleep on it. Oh, incidentally, you better pay attention because there'll be a quiz afterwards. And you'll be graded, and I know where you live, so don't try and fall asleep on us now. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, take that, okay. We had a problem with the sound on the DVD, so, no, go ahead. I don't need that anyway. I think my voice is the strongest part of my body right at the moment. My legs are shot almost. My brain is going too, I think. Alzheimer's is catching up. But anyway, let's show the video and see how it sounds. See if you can hear the soundtrack on it. And I'm going to get up over here.
Louder.
The 8th Air Force was the one that got all the glory, they got all the publicity. If you look back in history, so that way the 8th was the one that was always
Sorry, is the mic on? Is anyone monitoring audio?
The green light is on its own.
The green light's on.
The eighth gets all the glory, and yet someone must die. Sent the 8th Air Force out of England. They had Jimmy do that.
He's complaining how the 8th Air Force got all the glory and the 15th Air Force got nothing but abuse. So he's saying we did our job bombing the Germans and putting them out of action. And here we are in the 15th Air Force.
Air Force is the one that got all the glory.
That's better?
All right, that's good.
If you look back in history, so help me, the 8th was the one that was always doing everything. The 15th, yeah, they were sort of there. We used to sing a song. It's still the same old story. The 8th gets all the glory, and yet someone must die. But see, the 8th Air Force out of England, they had Jimmy Doolittle, the greatest PR man they had. But we had several targets out of the 15th Air Force in Italy, but our Air Force commander did not have the first outfit kill that they loved.
As a result, the 8th Air Force, flying from fields in England, is widely regarded as the first team, with the 9th, 12th, and 15th Air Forces playing second string.
We didn't consider ourselves that at all. We think we did a very commendable part of denying Hitler's machine by taking away his oil and his ball bearings and things that make the war machine of Nazi Germany work.
By late 1944, most original aircrews had been lost in action, become prisoners of war, or had completed their tours of duty and were back in the States. For more than 2 months, the Luftwaffe had been noticeably absent, attacking only in small formations and rarely penetrating the fighter escort. On the ground, the German command were saving their fuel and manpower for a massive winter offensive. It would later be known as the Battle of the Bulge. In mid-December, the Luftwaffe's remaining veteran pilots were unleashed to lead a concentrated fighter force in defense of the Reich. On December 17, 1944, the 461st was briefed for a target on the northern edge of their operational range. The primary target was the Orville refineries just north of Vienna in southeastern Germany, a round trip of over 1,300 miles.
Because it was a long mission, we had to carry a full load and conserve fuel to carry bombs and so on that we had, and orders of the day where we were going to climb over enemy territory with our vultures raised because of the drag enclosed.
Leading the 765th Squadron box was a veteran pilot on his second combat tour with the 461st Bomb Group. Lieutenant Eugene Ford was flying the Tulsa American, the last B-24 to be built at Douglas Aviation's factory in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Weather was a very thin haze, but it was hazy enough that you could not see the other squadrons in the group.
Losing contact with the other squadrons in the thick haze, Ford's flight drifted to the right of the rest of the group.
And all of a sudden we penetrated the wall, went out of it. The stuff we went into bright clear sky. The Germans had a welcoming party for us sitting up there.
Crew 128, led by Lieutenant Charles B. Lang, was flying its first mission with the 767th Squadron. Nose gunner Hjalmar Johanson had enjoyed building model airplanes in high school.
One of my favorite airplanes was the Me-109, German fighter plane. Very sleek, swift plane, high performance, and just a dandy-looking plane. Unfortunately, at a later experience, I didn't like them that much. When they started coming in on that mission over the Orville refinery, after we were shot up, badly damaged, and these Me-109s came right in on my nose turret. I sat up there and I had a plexiglass shield that protected me from their bullets and their cannon shots. Not much protection.
They came in out of nowhere. They were, I think, the top pilots that they'd saved up. They were very aggressive in their attack. Man, they were banging us up hard and fast. I had one FW-190 coming straight at me. Took out my nose gun, I saw that go and clipped my Martin turret as he went by and got him, right? Before my ball turret gunner could get the turret lowered. He just lowered it, and another fighter put a 20mm through his turret.
All of a sudden, these Me-109s, instead of being beautiful, sleek, marvelous-looking aircraft, they turned into spiders or tarantulas. And I just had to reach out and get those guns going and smash them, kill them, because those little wing lights would light up, and I knew they were hitting the plane. those little red eyes, those angry red eyes, boring in on me. So my opinion of the MB-109 changed considerably. Over half of our group were shot down. 29 guys, my buddies, my friends, were killed on that raid alone. And at least that same number were captured, taken prisoner, missing in action. It was a rough deal, it was a long flight, and we never actually reached the target.
Aboard Lang's aircraft number 66, Johanson watched from his nose turret as the Liberator was cut to pieces, first by flak and then by fighters.
We were hit by a flag, knocked a big hole in the wing, knocked out number 4 engine to start with. Shortly thereafter, number 3 engine went out. That's 2 engines on the right side of the plane, making the plane lose altitude. Difficult to steer because it was trying to go around to the right. We dropped down below the altitude of our squadron, our formation, and the German fighter planes jumped on us because we were a cripple. And that's what they wanted to see. They didn't want to see all the planes in formation. Very hazardous to their health if they came in on a full squadron with all machine guns, 10 or 12 on each plane. So they like to pick on the little cripples like us, and they sure did.
Lieutenant Lang gave the order to bail out and fought the struggling airframe as long as he could. The crew grabbed their parachutes as he stood on the left rudder pedal to prevent the plane from spinning out of control.
And all of a sudden, total silence. After all the machine guns, the anti-aircraft, the flak all around you, the engines roaring, and now we're coming down the parachute. Silence.
That should give you an idea of the magnitude of this and how many people gave their lives, plus ourselves who were survivors, the efforts that were put forth and the magnitude of it.
You're trying to get people who were actually involved rather than some historian who's writing about something that he never experienced. And even though we're inarticulate and we express ourselves poorly, while at the same time it's from the heart and it's from the personal experience.
A lot of young people today don't understand what it's about. And I think understanding is very important because we have a wonderful country here. I'm proud of it. And I think that every person that served in that war was a hero in his own right.
For over 2 years, the makers of this video have been compiling interview footage and supporting material to produce an accurate and compelling account of the 461st Bomb Group in World War II. With the cooperation of the 461st Bomb Group Association and historians in 5 countries, the documentary team has assembled an extensive body of source material.
Thank you. And let me just say that that video was taken at the Boston reunion in '95, I think it was, whenever that was. But anyway, a long time ago, so I looked a little bit younger there, I think. Anyway, what I wanted to do is to, well, you saw me coming down in the parachute, right? And now you're wondering, well, what happens now? Well, I'll tell you if you stick around long enough. And in addition to that, I have over on a table here a lot of memorabilia that I brought with me. Some German documents, my own diary, when I wanted to write a diary, only I didn't have any paper to write it on. So how did I do it? But I did succeed. And life in Stalag 3A was not a picnic, and I'll tell you about that at the right time. But let me give Orville a chance to say what's on his mind at the moment. Orville was ahead of me, and he was watching the carnage. This is, don't worry about these competing slides, not yet with the slides, if you hold off on them. Yeah. Let Orville get up to the, and you say what you want to do, Orville, because he's my partner on this.
I think it's good, yeah.
I didn't know I'd try. Before I get into my part of the story that Hjalmar is talking about, every time we get together, he puts on that damn uniform. I made up my mind before the day is up, I'm going to burn that damn.
shot down. I brag on that. But anyway, Orville, it's okay. You look beautiful.
Hjalmar and I are the same age, 90.
Exactly the same age.
And we both joined the Air Force with the idea that we were going to become pilots. So we took the examination for 2 days to become pilots, medical and physical, and we both passed. So then we were introduced to basic training. Everyone who went in the service went to basic training. Well, when we finished our basic training, the pilot program had been so oversubscribed. They say, we have too many pilots now. All of you are going to become gunners. And what a letdown that was. Yeah. So I went to gunnery school, he went to gunnery school. Then we were assigned to a crew. It turns out the crews that we were going to be flying with were flying B-24s. And in B-24s, I'm sure most of you know, that is a 10-man crew. 4 officers and 6 enlisted men. So Hjalmar, he was the nose gunner, and I was the tail gunner on the 484th. Now on December the 17th, 1944, I was scheduled to fly. We would go down the night before to the office, and if you were going to fly the next day, your crew would be listed that you were going to fly. So I knew I was going to fly, but had no idea where. So at that point in time, we get ready and do what we always do in the morning, have a little breakfast, and then go into a briefing and as to where the target really is. Well, the mission had been set up, as Hjalmar said, Orville oil refinery. And the way the mission was laid out, the 484th was going to lead the group. The 461st was going to follow us, and then the 451st was going to follow the 461st. So we were scheduled to fly at 24,000 feet. The 461st was scheduled to fly at 25,000 feet. Now, I'm getting back to where it really gets into my part of the story. I'm being a tail gunner, I'm looking back, and I can see the 461st behind us. They're far enough back that I knew that they were B-24s because I could see the tails, but I couldn't make out a particular plane. All of a sudden, they were being attacked by German fighters. With me looking back, I saw all of this taking place. So I alerted our crew that they're being attacked. And I can remember exactly what I called out to our crew. I said, the 461st is behind us and they're being attacked. And I said, a plane is going down. And I hardly had it out of my mouth. I said, another plane is going down. And it was happening just that fast. And was it total of 10 or 9 for Hjalmar that day?
Yeah.
Was it 9 or 10?
10, yeah.
10, I thought it was 10. 10 B-24s from the 461st were shot down before our fighter protection group caught up with the fighters, German fighters, and they had a tremendous dogfight. Then we were attacked by 2 Messerschmitts. We lost 2 planes. And I can remember very distinctly a B-109 was coming straight in at me from the rear, and I was firing at him, and when he got closer than that, he turned his belly to me and dove away. And he was trailing a little smoke, so I can't say that I shot him down. but I've always believed that I hit him. Whether I did or not, I don't know. So as time went on, we bombed the target, and then right after this fighter, I'm getting ahead of myself here, before I realized it, I should tell you this was my 19th mission that I was flying that day. And all of a sudden, if this is my B-24 sitting right next to us, I mean absolutely sitting right next to us, is an ME-109. I can't believe my eyes. He's not shooting at us or anything. He's just there. And our waist gunner on that side had him dead to rights. His wing wasn't any further from here to that wall. So I'm looking over out of my turret, which I can't traverse around enough because of the twin tails, and our waist gunner fired 2 rounds at him. Would have shot him down, except his gun's in. And then yet another thing, I've always thought about this years later. Why didn't he make an effort to shoot us down? And he never fired, the German fighter never fired a shot. So he and I are looking at one another. I can see him till the day I die, with his flying helmet on, his oxygen mask to his face, and all of a sudden he waves, just like that.
Wow.
So I know it was a reflex action on my part. I waved back. He dove away. And I think the Germans lost about roughly 50 fighter planes that day. And I have often wondered, why did this German pilot do such a young and daring thing to fly right up next to us? He didn't know that the waist gunner was on that side, the gun was going to jam. He wasn't firing at us. And it's one of the questions I keep asking myself, was he out of ammunition from shooting at the 461st? Or was his guns jammed? So I've done a lot of research trying to find out who they were. And they were the JG 300 fighter groups that day that attacked us and Hjalmar's group. And as much as I've tried to find out who that particular pilot is, I've never been successful. When we go back to the Czech Republic, there's a lot of young people over there are very much interested in the history of World War II. And they said, can you tell me, was there a number on the side of his plane? Or was there a painted street down the side? And I said, you know, I can't tell you. I said, I was so engrossed at just staring at him in his cockpit and then he dove away, I'll never know. But I made an effort to try and find it, but I never did. And he may have been one of the 50 that got shot down. I never know. But that's my part of the story. And so I was fortunate. I did fly 35 missions, and I made all of mine. Now I'm going to tell you another story. You were talking earlier about missions. When we went over there, when we first there, was 50 missions. That's what you flew. If you flew 50 missions, you could return home. But if you passed a certain parallel, you got credit for 2 missions. So as the war went on, we were going past that parallel more often than not. So they were only getting 25 missions out of a crew. They said, but we can't keep this up. So it was that point when they changed it to 35. And that's the way it got to 35. So you can hear stories, some will say 50, some will say 25 or 35. but that's really the way it turned out. Hjalmar?
Yeah, thank you, Orville. Yeah, good job. Orville had 35 missions. You know how many I had? 1. I got shot down the first time over. I didn't choose to get shot down. It's just the luck of the draw. Yeah.
How were the pictures made? You said those were pictures of you bailing out.
They're not really. Those are archival photos
thank you.
that the guys making the video up blended them in with my story that I was telling. So they couldn't take them actually of me or of any of the real action yet. So excuse me. But I feel sorry for the bunch back there standing up. That bothers me. I just hope you last for the rest of the meeting here. And I'm going to ask Gwen to blow the whistle on me whenever it's getting close to the time, because I don't want to go too long. And when I see you nodding on me, I'll quit right away. But I'm going to throw it open to questions immediately. I'd like to make this interactive. I don't want to give you a lecture this evening. I do that sometimes to schools. I've done a lot of school presentations, many of them, and when I invite you later to come up with any of your questions. Look at my memorabilia. I've got photos, I've got prison camp material, and I think you'll enjoy looking at that if you have the time or the energy or whatnot. But in any event, let me throw a little spice into my side of the story. I was born in Hollywood, California. I don't know whether it shows or not. But then when I was a small child in my mother's arms, she brought me to New York City. So I grew up in New York City on the sidewalks of Manhattan. And someone said, if you could make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I did that. And I have a whole childhood of stories which are interesting enough. But let's go back to, you saw me descending in that parachute, or at least someone. And I love this story about the guy with these beautiful women that picked them up. Well, when I landed in Germany, actually it was Austria at the time, southern Austria, I didn't see any beautiful women who were rescuing me. In fact, there were just some ugly German army men with rifles who were firing over my head. But I do have a bevy of beautiful girls to talk about when I got home, which we also heard the other day from two of the guys who wanted to go dancing after they came back into New York Harbor, as I did. But that's another story which I'll hold off because it's out of sequence, right? But stay tuned for the beautiful ladies. In this case, there were about a dozen of them. Yeah.
Tell them just a little bit about our 7th anniversary trip.
Oh, you know, I'm going to hold back on that. Let me finish. A crew, when it gets together, you guys know that you were all in crews, the veterans anyway. You meshed together beautifully. Everybody liked everybody else on the team. The captain gave the orders and everybody said, yes, sir, yes, sir. Well, you know, in my crew, it wasn't that way at all. Now, maybe it was my fault. Maybe it was my fault. But we were on a training mission, and the navigator always sat behind the nose gunner, as some of you guys will know, nose gunners. And I was up in the nose turret on a training mission over Colorado, out of Pueblo, when all of a sudden my oxygen mask collapsed. No more oxygen, and we were well above 15,000 feet at the time, 20,000 maybe. Anyway, so I said, I got to get out of here. You know how long you last without oxygen?
10 minutes.
About 3-4 minutes. and then your brain goes dead without oxygen. So I knew I had to get out of that turret and get oxygen right away. So I reached back, wiggled out of it, and headed in the back. And when I opened the doors of my turret, it was an old consolidated turret, not the Emerson turret that I was in later, but the consolidated turret. When you opened it up, the slipstream blew right through the aircraft. So it blew the navigator's books, his papers, everything, and put him in the tail gunner spot. And he was furious. So we get down to the ground, and I managed to get out and grab an oxygen bottle and get to another station where I could at least stay alive until we landed. And now we get on the ground, and my navigator then starts to scream at me, "You ruined the mission, you stupid so-and-so." I said, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not going to tell me that." He said, "You can't talk like that to an officer. You're nothing at all. See these bars on my shoulder?" And I said to him, "You know, you can take those bars and stuff them someplace, and I'll help you do it." He said, "You can't talk like that." So I'm talking about disputes in the crew, terrible. I mean, how could that happen? And the pilot, who should have jumped in and said, "Hey, give the kid a break." I was 18 years old at the time, and give the kid a break, but he didn't say anything. So I was ready to take care of the first lieutenant, the navigator. I would have plowed into him, but they said, no. And he says, "I'll get you thrown off the crew." And I said, "No way, you couldn't do it if you tried." And so he was never my buddy, the navigator. We sort of tolerated each other at a distance. So now we're getting shot up, really shot up. The plane, all these fighter planes that you saw there are coming around at us. And I'm going to show some, I got a couple slides there. My friend's going to take care of it. So what does my navigator start doing? He starts screaming over the intercom, "Oh, they're going to kill us. We got to do something about it." And I had these 250 caliber machine guns almost melting, shooting at all of these guys. I said, "What you jerk, get out of here." So now Tom came, pilot says, "Bail out." Everybody's got to bail out. And getting out of a nose turret, it was not the easiest thing to do. You had all your flying suit on and everything else. And you had to get the door open from behind your back. And in practice, we went through fire drill. And the navigator pulled me out. And that was the way it was. Got me over to where the nose wheel door was open, shoved me out. And snapped on my parachute because I didn't have a parachute on. I couldn't fit on. My parachute was bouncing around. And so here's my buddy. And I get out and I'm looking for him. And where's my parachute? Where is he? He's gone. I looked down, I could see him falling. So I guess he just as soon didn't care about me. And fortunately, it was right next to that open door, my parachute, like a good oversized football. I made a dive, recovered the fumble, strapped it on, and jumped out. Boom. And the kids in school asked, "Were you scared to jump out?" I said, "Wow. No. I was scared not to jump out. If that plane went in a spin, you would never get out." We had lost 2 engines at the time. 2 engines on the right side, and we had lost all the hydraulics, which I didn't know it at the moment, but the number 3 engine controlled the hydraulics apparently, and so here was a little episode of my buddy the navigator. We didn't have a perfect crew, but later I tried to make up to him when I met him back in Camp Lucky Strike when we were coming home. But anyway, let's go. Anybody had questions there at all on where I am at the moment? Yeah. Okay. I'm making myself perfectly clear, as Richard Nixon said, I think. All right. Oh.
We're Stalag 3A. That's not the main officers' camp at Saigon.
No. all right, let's go on. I get picked up by the Germans. They were shooting over my head to start with. I was glad they were doing that instead of aiming at me. And that night, I spent the night in the local jail cell in a town called Königsdorf, Austria. I went back there last November. I thought it would be interesting to go back and find the first cell where I was a criminal and locked up at the age of 19. But unfortunately, even though I had the help of some Austrian historians who were trying to help me out, the town had been leveled by the Russians when they came through to take that part of town. And they had destroyed the whole city hall, the jails, and everything else. So I never saw my first cell. But yeah.
Did you meet any of the other crew? Meet up with any of your other crew?
Yes. The first guy I met was my tail gunner, who, as soon as we had landed, now it was December 17th, very cold weather. It was the coldest winter in Germany in the last 100 years or something like that. And we were snow on the ground. I had tied my army boots, my GI shoes, onto my harness, because the guy said, you know, if you hit the ground, you want to have a good pair of shoes on you. Well, my problem was my shoelaces weren't that strong, so when I jumped, pulled the ripcord, my shoes went flying off. And they went down and hit some German maybe on the head. But now I had these great big flying boots. I had a heated suit, and these made tracks in the snow, about 6 inches of snow, that an elephant would make. So anybody could track me down, no problem. Anyway, I see my buddy coming along, it's my tail gunner, and he says, what are we going to do now? Where are we going to go? I said, I have no idea. But we had escape maps and all sorts of, but how do you know where you are? I had no clue as to where I was. And where do you march to? And how do you get shelter? Freezing cold, impossible. So we just started walking along the railroad tracks, and the next thing you know, that's when the guns went off, and we said, okay, comrade, we're giving up. That's it. So we got dumped in that local jail. Then they put us on a train the next day, heading west to WWII, which is in Wetterfall, Germany. Took a couple days to get there. We rode with civilians on the train. They were not happy to see us, and they were grumbling, and I could understand that because we were the guys who were bombing their towns and maybe even blowing up their houses and killing their families. But anyway, we got into WWII, and they greeted you, the Germans did, by dumping you into a solitary confinement cell. And that was always the practice, was to try and get information. And they'd come at you. You never knew whether it was day or night. No food, nothing. And they would alternate between turning the electric heat on in the cell or turning it off. So you either froze or they turned it all the way up until you were roasting. And at the same time, they'd come in with a flashlight and say, we want to know this information, how many planes, who was on your crew, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, name, rank, and serial number, that's all you get. And then they came back and said, okay, well, we'll keep you here. And the Battle of Bulge was going, so I said, we're driving all the Americans out of Europe now anyway, so you'll be here for a long time, which didn't make me feel too happy at all. Anyway, I didn't tell them anything. I went on then to, that was Orville, the interrogation center. They needed to get people out of it, and as a result, I hung around in WWII until they're going to move us out, and then they put us on boxcars, and we headed east. And we're supposedly going to Pomerania, which was WWII I, up in the Baltic. However, the British kept bombing the rail lines, and the Americans too, so that every time our railroad got, our train got it going in one direction, it had to stop and go on a siding, and in the meantime, we were getting no food at all, and in fact, even when the German Red Cross came to help out and give us soup or something, the guard shooed them away, and it was just 6 days, 60 guys in a boxcar, half a boxcar.
Yes, sir.
Was so crowded that you couldn't all sit down at the same time. And so we took numbers. The ones would stand up and the twos would sit down. And then, of course, when everybody got tired and sleepy, everybody was a mass of humanity. And you woke up with people on top of you, or guys who were injured screaming, and Germans didn't care. There were 2 guards on it that took the other half. And we got into Berlin. The guards locked us inside the boxcars and went to the air raid shelters. And we sat in rail yards and listened to the bombs come down. The Germans said, "Your friends the British are dropping the bombs on you, so enjoy it." And you could feel the boxcar rocking on its springs, and who knows what was going to happen next, you didn't know. They finally decided they couldn't get us on a train that would get us to Stalag Luft 1, so they dumped us in a nearby all German prison camp. We were supposed to be prisoners of the Luftwaffe, but they couldn't get us to a Luftwaffe camp. So we were in a camp with 17,000 inmates of every nationality you could imagine. And the weirdest experience, filthy conditions. I still remember the night I got in there, it was dark in the barrack, I didn't know where I was going, and we get into 3 bunks, and all of a sudden I heard some of these Americans apparently had a choral society. Amazing what guys would do. And they started singing, "Hear that train blow, boys, hear that train blow, late in the evening. Send it by mail, boys, send it by mail. Send it in charge of Birmingham jail." That was Civil War stuff. But, these guys were really great. And, amazing people in that prison camp. Let's go back to my slides because my friends did. Let's skip through these real quick because these guys know. All right, let's look at that for just a minute. Now, you guys who were on the bombers know exactly what we're talking about. But some of you people who have never been on a B-24, this is what a bomber is. It's a skeleton view. What's falling down here? What am I doing?
Your foot.
Oh, my foot. Excuse me.
Here, you got the,
You're on,
Okay.
wait a minute.
There's the pilot and the co-pilot were up in here. There you go, right here. Yeah.
Lift your foot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know,
Oh, I got
Nazis didn't get you, we don't want to.
pilot and co-pilot up here. They had a good view, but here I was up in the front, best seat in the house. I could see everything that was coming at me, whether I wanted to see it or not, in that Emerson turret. And what's that?
Please go on.
Oh, okay. If there's a question, I'll try to answer it. Yeah. And you had a radio operator, and you had the top turret gunner, and you had the ball turret down below, and you had the tail turret gunner, and you had the side turret gun, the side waist guns, not turrets. And that was supposed to protect us. All right, let's hit the other one. Okay, this is the Collins Foundation. I got a ride on that when it came through New Jersey, which is where I live now, and they wanted $300 to get a ride in that. And I said, hey, I had so many free rides, except for the last one that nearly cost me my life. Okay, give me a break. Now they couldn't do it. Anyway, it was a down memory lane taking that flight. There was my turret with the guns and everything else. Okay. That's it. Another picture of the turret. Okay. All right, now here were the questions. We were down here. Italy's down here below, and we had to fly over Yugoslavia. Had to fly over the middle of Austria here, and then this was Czechoslovakia at the time, and then up in here was Blackhammer, and which is where the Orville refinery was. Blackhammer and the Orville refinery were side by side, and this is where we were heading. And by the time we got past Vienna, which you can see in here, it's off on the side, and we took that flak in the wing, and it knocked out a great big hole in it. I looked out at that wing, and I said, "We're not going home in that plane. That's not going to take us back." Strangely enough, I wasn't all nervous or excited about it. I don't know why. Maybe I was just stupid. But that was the way it was. So the blue one is on the way up. We got almost up to the target when the fighter planes hit us, and then we were retreating back. We were going to try and find the Russian lines, which were over here on the other side of Hungary. Never quite made it, bailed out here over this part of Austria. Now, I was in Stalag 3A, where is that? That's the off. It's got to be up. It doesn't matter where that is. Yeah, but it's south of Berlin. In any event, I landed in Austria. Oh yeah. All right. The beautiful women weren't there to pick me up, as I said before. And I like those stories. But the camp itself, or not the next one with the, I'm sorry, yeah, there it is.
Oh, sorry, there.
This is a sketch made by my Czech friends. And this was, here if you can read Czech language, it says the battle on the 17th of December 44. And this was the Flying Finger. Philip Crossman was the pilot. Half of the guys were killed in that. And these were ME-109s, you can see the marking, and they were shooting up. And these were, these were the P-51s, our escort. But I never saw those guys. All I saw were German, and all of this mess. Ted, the ball turrets were pointing down, and it was as though someone came in and hit the hornet's nest, you know, with the Mexican custom there, or the baseball bat, and it banged the hornet's nest, and out come the presidents. Well, in this case, all the hornets came out. And it was one hell of a time until finally our plane got so badly damaged we headed south and tried to find the Russian lines, got partway down, and then that's when I bailed out. What was the next one there? Was that the last?
Yeah. Now there's, this is.
These, yeah. Okay. This is telegrams my mother got. This was 2 months. Well, first of all, the first one was that I'd been reported that missing in action. So for 2 months, my mother didn't know whether I was dead or alive. Then she finally got this one, and it just says that I've been a prisoner of war of the German government. So you can imagine how that affected my mother, and how many of those telegrams went out. A lot of them were also that they were lost or killed completely. So I think it was a break that way. Okay, so now let's get back to the present camp. That's enough on the visual aids. Thank you. what was it like in prison camp? Somebody asked that. And my answer to that, it was not Hogan's Heroes. It was not Hogan's Heroes. In fact, if you want to see any one Hollywood movie that came close, it was Stalag 17. That was reasonably close to the conditions. And in fact, if you'll remember that story, I don't want to overrun my time here, but Stalag 17, William Holden, I think it was, he was suspected of being a spy put in there by the Germans. And so when they looked at my name and the Swedish name I had, these are the internal CIA, that the prisoners had their own police force. Very clever guys, they're really smart. They knew what they were doing. So when I showed up at the doorstep, they wanted to make sure I wasn't a German spy, being put in their midst to spy on them. So how did they find out? Well, they asked, where did you live? So I said, oh, I lived on 69th Street in Manhattan at the time. I did my very hard scrabble life. My father had died when I was 5 months old, never knew my father. My mother was running a rooming house, just trying barely to stay alive in the middle of the Depression. We had nothing at all. And so the guy started asking questions. There was one guy there that actually had lived in that area. And he said, where did you go for ice cream soda? So I said, oh, we went to Queso's drugstore. And what street was that on? And I told him, oh, that was on Lexington Avenue, 68th Street. And then they went on, they asked other questions. Really, the internal CIA was terrific. They would have ferreted out anyone who didn't know where they were going. What else? There were two guys in the camp. I said before, 17,000 prisoners of every nationality you could imagine. And I had one shower in 5 months. And I had one set of clothing. It wasn't a uniform. It was a shirt. It was a pair of pants, shoes I did have. The Red Cross brought that in. But I never was able to wash the clothing for 5 months. And so they were crawling all the time with body lice. And you couldn't get rid of them because they get in your clothing, and I never went to sleep alone. And as soon as I got a little bit warm, I could feel them crawling. And I didn't have any blood to spare at that time. And then you had the fleas also that were infesting the straw mattress that we slept in. So no matter what you did, you could never get clean. The guys with dysentery, no medical attention whatsoever. Really a horrible, miserable experience. But there was one thing that kept morale a little bit higher, and that was that there was a clandestine radio in the camp that picked up news, and we as individuals never knew where it was. That was top secret. If the Germans had found it, their heads would have rolled. They looked all over and they never found it. I discovered it by reading a book of a war correspondent who had been in Stalag 3A, south of Berlin, and he told in this book after the war where the crystal radio set was. He could pick up BBC, could pick up armed forces, could pick up local German stations, so that we knew that the Americans were coming in and the British from the west, and we knew that the Russians were coming in from the east, and Germany was being closed in this vice grip. But there were two guys in my barrack that decided, nope, we're going to escape. So how did they do it? Did they dig a tunnel? no. That's old hat. Too intensive labor involved in that. So instead of that, these two guys had been prisoners for a long time, and they had received a lot of home parcels from home, which had a lot of different goodies in it. I never received any parcels, period, while I was there. All the time, my weight was dropping. At the low point, I had lost 40 pounds in 5 months. So if anybody wants a good diet, I can tell them exactly what I did. Red Cross parcels had very irregular arrival with a Red Cross parcel. The Red Cross parcel had all sorts of good food like powdered milk, chocolate bars, just the things that would sustain your life. But it also had one other ingredient. But let me get back. I got away from the two guys who wanted to escape. How did they get out of camp? My mind wanders. My Alzheimer's is closing in on me. But these guys bought their way out with cigarettes. They had received tremendous quantities of cigarettes, and they ended up bribing the guards. And they managed to get out. Now, we had to, in the barrack, they were in our barrack, cover for them. So every morning when they had appel or roll call, the Germans would get out and count the front rows, and then they tried to keep the rows very even, and they had them 5 deep so they could look at it across the front and multiply by what the depth was. However, we kept 2 pockets open in the middle. Some of the guys, when the guards came up and counted, they leaned towards the empty hole this way, and on the other side, the guys leaned the other way. And we got away with it for about 2 weeks. And then finally, the Germans said, no, we know there's 2 missing. We want to find out who they are. We want to, you're not going to escape with this, so you got to tell us who they were. Not a word. Nobody says a word. Mum's a word. So Germans had a way out of it, though. They gave us dog tags. I have my German dog tags over there. I have my U.S. dog tags on the plate, too, with the other memorabilia. So the Germans would look at your German dog tag, and they had a mug shot of you, and they had a card on the desk, and so you went one by one, and they looked at it, and then if they found you in there, you would get marched into the next compound until finally the box, everybody was gone, everybody was on the other side of the fence, and there were 2 cards left in the box, but not unclaimed box. So they knew who it was, and about 10 days, maybe a little longer, they came back and said, if you want to escape, we're going to have a parade, and we're going to show you why you don't want to escape or try to escape. And they had caught these guys going through the front line. And they brought them back, and as a precautionary tale to us, and they had beaten these guys to a pulp. They had tied them to backs of a straight back chair and sat them down in front, tied them on, because they would have fallen off the chair otherwise. Knocked out all the teeth, broke their arms, just mangled them terribly. So at that point, I decided I wasn't going to try to escape. It wasn't worth the effort. And the consequences were too much. And besides, I knew from the radio report, because somebody on one side of the British compound would be told that the news is coming through, and they'd go over and they'd catch whatever it was right at dusk, at the start of dusk, so the Germans wouldn't notice, bring it inside, and they would read the story that Patton has advanced so far, and they've now taken so many German cities, and Russians have come in from the east. So we knew that the end was very close to, and it was foolish to try to escape. Where would you go anyway? You couldn't speak German, the clothing you had gave you away at any time. And you're so emaciated, you couldn't have taken any long walks at all. So that was the end of that. And we just hunkered down with our lice and our fleas, and the food got worse and worse. The German, we calculated the German rations themselves were about 1,000 calories a day. So you can imagine how long that would, how much weight that would put on you or not. Anyway, okay.
Where was the radio?
What's that?
Where was the radio? Did you ever find out?
Say it again?
The radio, did you find out where the radio was?
I found out where the radio was. It was just, it was taken apart. And one guy had been a dental technician, and he put the crystal inside a false tooth. He had it in his mouth all the time. And the other one was very, they would never have found it, never have found it. So the time came now, finally, the time for release was going to come one of these days, and we knew they were closing in. And we looked out one morning, and all the German guards had left carrying Red Cross parcels with them. And behind them, very close behind, were the Russian troops in tanks and combat vehicles. And they came in and knocked down the barbed wire and everything. And you know how an army travels on its stomach? You know that saying? You know what that means? Who knows what that means? An army travels on its stomach. Does that mean they're crawling on the ground? No, what? Yeah, supplies. Once the supplies get exhausted or too far, and line, you don't have enough food or enough munitions, the army can't advance any. So it has to travel on its stomach because it'll be empty. And only the Russians were different. They didn't have food, but they wanted to celebrate with us Americans. And they had all American equipment, Dodge trucks, they had tanks that were American-made, trucks that were American-made. So they were great. They were great. They wanted to give it, say thank you to the Americans. So they came in and attacked. And then in order to celebrate, discovered what they used for, instead of food that they couldn't advance without, and that was, they each had jugs of vodka inside the tent. So they poured me a water glass full of vodka. And I was supposed to drink that in my condition. I took a couple fake sips and then disposed of it. That would have killed me right on the spot, I tell you. Even today I couldn't drink, yeah.
So when you say they bought their way out, how exactly did they do that? Did they have...
Well, they promised the guards, and they knew when the guard shifts were going, and they brought more than one guard, and to look the other way when they were going to sneak out undetected.
At nighttime, would that have been?
What?
At night? Would that
Yeah, it would be at night, yeah. And if there are other questions there, I know it's getting late, so you may want to go home, but if you want to stay later and look at my documentation up here, you're welcome to that. I will say one closing, I'll talk about the beautiful women, because that seems to be what everybody's interested in. When I got back to the States on the Liberty ship, and came in past the Statue of Liberty, and I looked up at that lady there of Liberty, and I said, thank you. I never realized what my liberty meant to me until I lost it. And it was only important to me after I lost it to recover it and to know what it was like to be a human being and not inside barbed wire and under the control of other people. And I was coming to the land of the brave and free. And so where did they put me? R&R in New Jersey, Atlantic City. And what's going on in Atlantic City at exactly the same time? Oh, let me say this. No GI, no veteran, when they say we want you to volunteer for an assignment, would say, yeah, I'll volunteer, because we know every time we did that, we got the dirty end of the stick. So the sergeant in charge of our hotel, now I'm living in a hotel, coming from the prison camp, sheets and everything else, and they came in and made them up, and they fed me food, and brought anything I wanted. From the prison camp, it was like 100% turnaround, and I'm living now. I'd never been in a hotel before in my life, and so now I'm really living. And then they said, we got this special volunteer, we need volunteers. You guys, please now, who wants to be a volunteer? No answer. The next day, he came back again, he said, I gotta get somebody. So I said, what's the job duty? Oh, he said, it's pretty tough. You have to be an escort to one of the Miss Americas. We want to take pictures. We've got to get you guys out dancing on the floor, because these were all the finalists in the Miss America contest. So that was really tough. So I got Miss Connecticut at the time, and I thought she was a doll, and because I was pretty handsome myself. And I'm afraid she was thinking more about her becoming Miss America than she was about that handsome young guy that was waltzing her around the floor. But that's my story of the beautiful women. There were at least a dozen of them there. And I got one of them to be my Miss America. Yeah. Okay, I think that does. Yeah, I got a question here.
I'm just wondering if you have been the person, the story that goes around, that you go into the schools and whatnot and make speeches and whatnot. You do that.
I do that all the time, yes.
Are you not the one, I hope, that went to this school and the teacher being one of the later ones, young teachers? This man went into the school, go talk to his class, and she introduced him as so-and-so and so of World War XI. What this gentleman did, he picked up his hat and walked out the door. I don't blame him at all, but that shows, that's where we stand.
Yeah.
People don't know.
That's true, yeah.
They do not know it. They're trying to rewrite the history, and it won't work.
But I do my best. I go to so many schools, and I try and make it interesting. I was also honored by the History Channel. They did a series on me. I have a video that they took. They taped me a lot of times, and they put me in front of a class of 200 kids in one of the high schools. And I did my thing, and they recorded it all, but of course they have to keep cutting, because timing is important. When you're doing something commercially, they cut it to a bone, and I think they ruined it. But the other point that I wanted to get across was, I was talking in a town nearby where I live in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, and it was Veterans Day, and there were maybe about 30, 35, 40 veterans coming in to talk to the classes. And I always volunteered. I'll talk to the classes anytime. Other guys were a little reticent. But anyway, I'm listening to the guys together. We're having breakfast ahead of time. And they're all Americans, supposedly. They're all American veterans. One guy's got a strange accent. So I go to him and I say, "You sound like a German. What are you doing here with all these American veterans?" And he says, "Oh, I'm Polish." And I said, "Oh, you speak German?" "Yeah." "Oh, yeah, sure." Well, then he asked me, "Where was the oil refinery where you were shot down?" And then he comes up to me, he says, "Odertal?" So he throws his arms around me, and he shouts at the top of his lungs, "You saved my life! I said, "What do you mean? I don't even know you." It turned out he was a Nazi slave laborer, Polish. He had been in Auschwitz, and he was working in the Odertal oil refinery when our bombs dropped and blew up a lot of the installation. He was so happy to see the bombs all around him, and so after that, we get together regularly. He was my friend because I saved his life, because he was unable to escape. Okay, so I'll, thank you.